Numbers. And it's happened every time after that. The Republican Guard, we've got superior numbers. What did the spirit of Khalid bin Waleed that they had in Afghanistan? They didn't say we had numbers. They just said Allahu Akbar. They weren't worried about numbers. The Chechens, who Grozny's been destroyed, it's been devastated. They didn't have numbers. They said we have nothing but Iman and our Quran and a bowl of rice. That's it. But they defeated the Russians in 1996. The Russians asked them to negotiate. They stormed the palace and Boris Yeltsin had to flee in the night. Vladimir Putin said in late 1999, I shall fight the Muslims and their Lord. 2 weeks later, the Muslims marched on Grozny. The Russians weren't there. So, whenever we have to think about anything as Muslims, part of the spirit of Khalid bin Waleed, and it doesn't just count for warfare, it's for everything in life. Don't worry about what's popular now, what's hot now, what's good now. That's only numbers. Never worry about numbers. They always looked at how big is the Iman, not how big is the army. How big is the Iman? Because the faith, if you have faith in Allah and you're right with Allah, you've got so many options. But if you're not right with Allah, then anyone can beat you. Someone small, smaller numbers, anyone could beat you. And so part of the spirit of Khalid bin al-Waleed is to not worry about what everyone else is doing, or, oh, the numbers seem so great, or there's so many odds against me in life. Always be creative. Another thing we learned from Khalid as well is Khalid never complained about his lack of supplies. Sometimes he just had 10,000 troops and he was facing 100,000, 200,000, and he'd win. But how many of us, we have food, we have shelter, we have a nice place to stay, some of us have decent families, but we complain still. We're not happy, we're ungrateful. Oh, I have this, but I want the bigger one. I have this, but I want the better tasting one. I have this, but it's not the latest model. I want the next one. And we complain and we complain and we complain. Khalid bin al-Waleed was told to fight the Iraqi army, and he rolled over the Euphrates River without even looking at it. They actually rode their horses over the water at high tide. And when they got there, they saw, we've got fewer resources than the enemy. But they still did it. In 711 AD, Tariq ibn Ziyad came across the Strait of Gibraltar, and when the Muslims, the rest of the army had come along with him, they burnt the boats. And his army looked at him while he burnt the boats. He said, we either die here, or Islam sets foot on this land and spreads beyond. They did not go back. That's faith. They had few resources. Few resources. So be grateful with what you have. Sometimes it's easy to complain because we don't always look at the people that were lower than us. Khalid once was massaging his back, and he took his shirt off to scratch one of the wounds, the open wounds on his back that had healed over. It used to itch, and he was scratching it. And when he took off his shirt, Omar looked at his back and cried. He said, I've never seen a back like that in my life. It was just covered with wounds. Sword marks, spear marks, big open gashes, things that hadn't healed properly. So if you've ever seen people like with a lot of stab wounds, there's a friend of mine, he had something like 50 stab wounds, and they didn't heal right, they didn't close properly. So on his back, he looked like he had all these leeches. They looked like all these leeches, and we used to look at his back and just say, man, you gotta get that like sewed up or looked at, because I can't even eat when I see your back looking like this. You gotta get that sewed up, fixed, get something done with it. It's horrible looking. I hate looking at your back, man. Just pussy, well, it's my back. I can do this if I want to, man. You know. And so he used to but what we see from that is Khalid's back was worse than that. Hundreds of sword wounds in battles. He once caught smallpox, and he had the deep pock marks because he scratched them. And he had these deep pockmarks on the left side of his face. Which reminds me of another thing. Never look at, because sometimes we imagine the Sahabas, they're all like these beautiful, dashing, James Cagney, good-looking guys, and they've got all the, the crisp white jalabiyas, and when the dirt comes up, they say, Subhanallah, and the dirt goes back, and they do all these other things. We always imagine them like these type of guys, and it's some of the Sahaba, if you actually saw a lot of them, if you looked at a lot of the Sahaba and you were actually able to see them, you'd probably be quite taken aback by some of them. I mean, Uthman ibn Affan, he was thrown into a fire where they rolled him in a rug and thrown him in a fire. And he had third-degree burns over 60% of his body, so his skin was permanently wrinkled. Right? So sometimes we think of the Sahaba, we might be thinking that they're these sort of unblemished people, but they suffered for this faith. They suffered. And sometimes we say, they didn't let us, leave school early for Jummah today. And we're thinking, that, next come the concentration camps and the gas chambers. But it's not as deep as that. It's not as deep as what Khalid went through. It's not as severe as what Khalid and all the others went through. So what you need to learn from Khalid's story is, don't look at the outward package and think, Allah's never going to use him for anything or her for anything. Don't look at the guy and say, Allah's not going to use somebody's wife for anything. Allah's not going to use somebody black for anything. Allah's not going to use somebody Arab for anything, or someone from this brother, or someone from that tribe, or someone from this clan, or someone from that family. Are you kidding? What would Allah use the minhas for? What would Allah use the jat for? What would Allah use? Allah will use anybody. Allah used the Pathans to give us Abu Dawood, who wrote Sunan Abu Dawood, with Ali Qari. Allah used the Meepuris to give us Imam Muslim. Allah will use anybody He wants to give us anybody. Allah used the Greeks to give us Bayhaqi. Allah used the Central Asians to give us Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Nasa'i. All these people. Nasa'i died on his porch from multiple stab wounds. Right? He's a hadith scholar. He was stabbed to death. He was laid on his porch. He died on his porch. Allah will do anything with anybody. Mujaddid al-Thani, Abu Dawood, Ahmad al-Khan, all these people, Allah used the Pathans for whatever He wanted and made them scholars and said, these people represent the religion in that time. And anybody else Allah chooses to represent the religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used Imam Barbahari, who was coming from the lower section of Barbahar, which was in India, and includes some of the section of what we're calling the Punjab today. Allah used one Punjabi to bring the religion in Baghdad. And He'll do anything He wants to with anyone else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's of no concern what their accent is, what their family is, what their brotherly is, what their culture, their background, their race. None of that stuff matters. Allah will use anybody to bring across this religion. And sometimes you'll be surprised who it is, because we have these little things in our heart that tell us, oh no, not them. And sometimes we don't even realize it's there until all of a sudden, like when Usama ibn Zayd, he was made the leader of the army. And some of the Sahaba said, how is he made the leader of the army? He's so young. But they forgot that this same youngster, 15 years of age, was in the military with the Muslims. Now he's ready to lead. So never look at something that's ugly, or something that seems ugly, or something that seems small, or something that seems insignificant. Because people in the time of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, they used to say, this young boy is an imam in the belly of his mother. And he memorized 1,000,000 hadith, wrote the largest hadith collection. One of the great imams of history, who bore the name Nu'man, he was a small baby. He was brought to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Ali said, oh Allah, bless him with knowledge and make him a faqih. That was Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Someone small made someone big. Right? One boy named Abdul Qadir, born small. Allah made him big. Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani rahimahullah. Baybars had sword wounds on his face and all the way down his body, and Allah used him to protect North Africa. Baybars didn't even know who his father was, what his race was. He was a mixture of several white races that had been brought together, and he was a slave originally. He didn't even know who his family was. But Allah used him to protect the religion. Allah used the Kurds with Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi to protect the religion. Qutuz,